only person that I ever wanted to look at me and say, I'm proud of you, son, was my dad. And I turn around, not only show up, but basically say, I've lost it all.
Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I'm not gonna have enough money to pay rent. I had an eviction sign on my apartment.
You are a fucking failure. I went completely internal. Like, I didn't tell anybody. Couldn't talk to partners, family, friends, colleagues, because I was so embarrassed doesn't even cover it. Back at it, back in the studio, broken-ish with one of my favorite humans in the world, David Purinton, CFO, partner, Ava Health. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday to you.
You know, everything we're seeing these days all over social media and media in general is, you know, all the success stories and everybody, sharing the 12 steps to success and the 5-step course to make all the money and everything else. And we're seeing a little bit more, but not a whole lot around the reality that success often comes through a long sequence of risks and failures. And so I know you and I have both had this experience that, sure, we've experienced some success in our lives and our business and everything else, and yet we have more or less failed our way forward to where we are today. And I want to spend a bit of time just talking about what failure is like, what it's like to go out, to take risks, to fail, the wisdom that we get through that, and ultimately how we continue to move forward through all of these sometimes extremely painful life lessons. And what sparked this conversation in particular was we were joking last night about some of the jobs that you've had in the past, and they were very funny to me considering your history of working in investment banking and private equity and being a CFO and a founder and a multi-time founder and all of this, and also working at the plastic factory and picking up dog shit. And like, these were jobs that you had, right? And so you talked a little bit about in your first time on Brokenish with Roman about just going from the surf grom to, CFO, and just felt like it would be an interesting dialogue for us to kind of dive into what it has been like for us over the years to kind of fail our way forward.
I'm honored that you chose me to be on the podcast about failing. Thank you. But I'm glad that we share one big thing in our past and many things, but one big thing is that, like you said, we've hit a lot of failures and we've hit some pretty serious lows. But we also look back on that and can say, despite the pain and the brutality of it at the time, that like we can see the value in it, and really more than anything that like we didn't stop. And I think that's like something that we both share in common that's really special, that the failures didn't keep us from picking up and trying again.
Well, yeah, and you were speaking just before we sat down here about just kind of the current state of the world and how everything feels really heavy right now, and there's a lot going on. And so like the conversation probably even more relevant today than it even was, 6 months or a year ago, about like there's just a lot of heaviness. There's a lot of people that are maybe feeling stuck, right? And so I think part of it was just the opportunity to help normalize, right? That like no matter where we sit, no matter what the titles are, no matter any of that there's a very human experience to going through this thing called life.
Yeah, I think a lot about like, over the last year, there's been quite a lot of layoffs. It's, the white collar working force, the corporate jobs, Amazon, UPS, Deloitte, PwC, it just kind of the list goes on and on. The federal workers, like there's just a lot of people that have been laid off. And then anyone who's not necessarily caught in the middle of like the massive layoff wave that happened over the last year, but lost a job for whatever reason, trying to get back into the workforce with now so many people trying to get jobs, and really like incredibly qualified, super bright, talented folks, and finding that challenge of getting a job. I mean, you talked about the plastic factory. I think about that job a lot for myself, where just to set some context here, I graduated college. I worked at a bank, selling investment products at the bank. mutual funds, CDs, sometimes some stocks and bonds, and insurance and risk management, and then moved into the business banking side, and then eventually left the bank and went to go work for this environmental advocacy nonprofit, San Diego Coastkeeper, where I was writing grants. I was actually working with, crazy enough, like RFK Jr. at the time. He wasn't who he is. Like, he was the environmental advocate back then. Saved the Hudson River, and started the Coastkeeper Alliance, or the Waterkeeper Alliance. And so, I had all these experiences, and then you fast forward, and I'm in Denver, working at a plastic factory that was right next to, if you've ever been to Denver on I-70, going to or from DIA, you've seen that big puppy chow place, the dog food factory. It was right next to that, so you just smell the dog food coming in all day. And the work tables were really low. Everyone else there was like normal height or short, and like I'm 6'3", so like I'm like curled over these work benches all day. And the ground gets really hard over the course of the day just standing there. The plastic, you're fabricating plastic all day, and basically, like, think of it like when you go into a gas station and you see the little plastic box with the cookies in it or whatever. That's what we were making, and the first one's fun to make. Maybe like the first like 3 of them are kind of fun to make, but you're making like 3,000 of them, and over the course of like a month or two, and it just gets so repetitive. And my job, as the lowest man on the totem pole, usually wasn't to put it all together, which is maybe somewhat interesting. Still not after 20 of them, certainly not after 500 of them. And a lot of times I'm just even like sanding the plastic or just doing the basic fabrication, and it just got so, you just sit there in that plastic factory doing the same thing over and over. And looking back on, like, man, I was I had this great job at the bank, and then at San Diego Coastkeeper, and now I'm here. And and actually, for a period of time too, I didn't even have a ride to and from, and I lived in South Denver, which is like quite a distance, and so I had to ride my bike over an hour every day to and from, and Denver gets cold in the winter, so that was a little challenging to do at some points. And that feeling of like, you're stuck. I mean, there's no like career growth in something like that. I was making minimum wage, and uh, and then kind of like thinking about, like, folks. I'm just using that one example right now with all the layoffs and people that are trying to find jobs right now and how challenging it can be. And it's just like, God, man, I know how brutal that can feel. And you're doing something that like you don't want to be doing for work, and you feel really undervalued. Um, yeah, I mean, the empathy is real on that.
So what was the feeling? I mean, you speak to the the brutality of what you were experiencing, but like what was that? Like, what were you experiencing on a daily basis?
Like, I don't know how to put it exactly. The language isn't coming to me exactly, but it's like I'm stuck. I'm not, like, not that I'm worthless, but that my worth or my value in a professional setting certainly isn't being like seen at all, and it'll never get seen here in this plastic factory. Um, and there's no way out, and that uh, I can barely make ends meet. Like, I lived in a house with 18 other dudes at that point, so I could afford rent, but still, I mean, it was like, there's no way out, and I'm stuck. And you do that long enough, and that starts to then, I think, evolve and transform into sort of like a view of yourself in that moment of like, well, it's just because I'm not worthless. I don't, like, I'm trying to like get the language for it right, but like, that's just who I am now.
But if what I hear is shame,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like that, like I am bad. like I'm inherently bad, right? And
Yeah.
again, you could use a lot of different terminology for what that is, but it's not so much guilt as like I did something bad or I made a bad decision. It's now like internalized to the point of where I feel bad about actually who I am as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for me, through those types of experiences, it was always, right, the mind playing like this story over and over, or this narrative, right? See,
Mm-hmm.
you really are a piece of shit. See, you really do suck. You really don't have a lot of value to add. See, right? Like all these stories, like just constantly playing in my head, and then like reinforcing that feeling, like walking out at the end of the day saying, my God, like, do I even have any hope? You know, like for what the future could hold? Because I not only have this like strong sense of feeling that, but then like what I'm telling myself as well. And I think that was like always one of the hardest things for me in scenarios and situations like that over time, was also what I was telling myself, you know, and constantly doing the menial work. And then just in my head is constantly just telling me that while I'm doing that all day, just like reinforcing. And then how it just ruthless that becomes over time, like towards yourself. Like it just becomes, yeah, so ugly over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the and you're hitting on like I think a key part of that is that there's like a time component to this too. That when it's extended over, months, years, however long it ends up being, that it evolves into something else like that ruthless shame.
Mm,
So you ran for reference like me picking up dog shit. So I had another job years later where I was working at like some apartment complex, and my main job there was, well, I mean, I was just like kind of grounds, but there was nothing really to do on the grounds other than pick up the dog shit, and so that was my job. And I always like joke about it in retrospect now, but it was funny that like there was. By the way, anyone watching this who has like something like this in your apartment complex, please pick up on this one. Um, those areas where you've got like the bags that you can grab in like the little trash can, those kind of poles right there. Within a 10-yard perimeter, that's where the most dog shit is, right there, right around that. And there's a trash can right there. So just grab the poo and put it in the little trash can. It's that simple. But that was my job, was like the little 10-yard perimeter. It was a huge apartment complex. So I'd like go around like those little like dog bag, trash can little areas, and I would just clean up the dog poo around there all the time. But that was for a shorter period of time. I only did that for a month, so it didn't quite set in. However, it was also in the context of a period of life where I was just like in a cycle of failure. And so I'd get, an opportunity and I'd fail at it. And then, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I'm not gonna have enough money to pay rent. I had an eviction sign on my apartment. And I'm just like, I'll do anything. Like I'm going to the food bank for, all my groceries. Um, and so there's a little bit of like a different spin on it where it's like I'm in this cycle of failure at that point where it's like I can't get out of this. And anytime a new opportunity would come up, there was a feeling of like, well, I'm going to take it. Obviously, I need some money
sure.
and everything, but like it's just going to end in failure. It's all going to collapse at some point. It's like watching cars going down a freeway and eventually like the taillights kind of flicker off in the distance and they fade out. Like I knew at some point this is all going to fade away. It cannot hold together. It will come falling down. It will crash. And it's just going to be a matter of time. And then that became my outlook on like a lot of parts of life. It was just like nothing can hold together. It will all come falling down and break at some point because that's who I am. I am a failure.
Whew. Boy, like that's really heavy. And obviously I have felt that in many ways. And you're speaking about failure in that place. And, I think the most painful experiences of failure I have had in a professional setting have actually been on higher stages. It hasn't been so much. Well, actually, I'll go back. When I was trying to get sober, I got this wonderful opportunity, and I had worked at hardware stores as a teenager. And so I had a little bit of experience working like in hardware stores. And so I'm like desperately trying to get a job. I'm living in a tent in my uncle's backyard. I kind of think I have it all together still, like, I've like, I've jerry rigged like a TV out to my tent, I'm kind of like, man, this isn't that bad, but so I get this opportunity and there's a guy and it's one person that runs like a key cutting shop and a little bit of like hardware. And the guy's going off to college. And so like, I'm going to step in. And all I wanted in a job at that point was to like not have to deal with people, So it's like, this guy's leaving. He's going to train me. All I have to do is basically show up. I know how to cut keys. I know how to talk a little bit about hardware. Like, this would be amazing. Perfect job for me, But it was 20 minutes away and I didn't have a car. But because I was entitled, because it should have been closer, right? All these things, I literally couldn't get myself to the job. And I was so loaded when I would end up showing up at the job that I actually like couldn't remember like really basic things. Like, this key gets cut this way.
Yeah.
And so like, you got this guy who's kind of looking at me, who's about to go off to college, like, going to give me this job. And it was like, even the simplest things, like I couldn't do at that point, right? I literally couldn't remember like the M2 key gets cut. Like,
I want to interject really quick.
Yeah.
I had a buddy who he started as a carpenter and excuse me, I don't think this is the PC way to say it, but he kind of had like wet brain, at first.
Yeah.
And so he'd be like, he'd take a measurement on one side and then he'd flip around to now go cut the wood on the other side and he would forget it. And so like that little moment between taking the measurement and turning around to go cut, he couldn't keep it in time. So.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, obviously like you can't take mass quantities of benzos and remember anything. And so that was like, and I remember, right, like the owner of the shop called me like 3 days in and was basically like, hey man, like this isn't working out, And I remember feeling at that point, probably similar to you and talking about the plastic factory and working the grounds, that like, I can't even do that, right? Like I can't even show up and remember the right keys to cut or to find the right bus route from where I'm living in the tent in the backyard to get to the spot to actually show up on time for work. And like, that was wrapped up, of course, in a whole lot of, active drug use at the time and all of that. So I don't think that the failure was like as deep because I was already feeling so much shame and isolation and loneliness because of all the other stuff going on. But like, I'll always remember that of thinking like, this was an opportunity that would have been like so amazing for what I wanted at the time. Don't have to deal with people, just get a paycheck, show up, say hello to folks, take like very simple, very easy job. And yet like I couldn't even do that. And that, of course, then like progressed to failures at like a much bigger level, with like a lot on the line. So I guess before like going there though, I'm curious, like you talk about this idea of maybe like feeling hopeless, right? Was there a moment that changed? Like, where did you begin to then find any hope? You just described kind of thinking like, this is never going to get better. This is just who I am. Like, I'm just a failure moving forward. Like, was there a moment you can look back on or something that shifted or changed where you began to have a little bit of hope for what your future held?
Yeah, I think for most of us, it's probably very similar. It was when I started really taking my recovery seriously, working a program of recovery.
Sure. Okay. Got it.
That was.
That makes sense.
And started to have just some general hope for like, oh, I could actually like stay sober. Like I don't ever actually have to drink again. And that little flicker of hope right there starts to like turn into, it's just like the common analogy of like a little flame that catches in the tinder and then sets off the entire forest. And so that was then what turned into, okay, you can actually take on like this next challenge here and not feel like you're going to failure. And you might, and like you're used to, like you actually are pretty good at failing now, so like you don't need to worry. But also I think around that point too, and I don't remember exactly when it hit me, but I was hanging out with some like older guys in the 12-step community, and they called themselves like the God Squad and kind of big book thumping dudes, but they were super cool and would take me to, I had nothing at first, especially like I couldn't afford to get myself to meetings. So they'd pick me up and take me to dinners afterwards or lunches, breakfast, whatever. And then they take me to like, do go 12-step someone and some like really crazy parts of town too sometimes. And these guys were, by and large, like incredibly successful, incredibly wealthy. Like I remember this one point, like this guy comes walking in. We're all sitting there at some little diner after a meeting, and he's like has this like look on it, and he says like that he owes the IRS $2 million in back taxes, and he just found out he's got to pay it now, and everyone just starts like busting up laughing, and then he starts like laughing at himself too. And I'm just like, I've got no money in the bank. I'm actually overdrawn in the bank right now, and I don't have a paycheck coming in like the near future. Like, and you got a $2 million thing, and you're laughing at it, like, and it just started to kind of normalize this feeling of like, it's okay. We're gonna always get through this. Like you put the one foot in front of the next, do the next right thing, and you're gonna be all right. So somewhere around that time in life, that like it just started to like feel like, okay, I can take on a project, I can take on something new, and I might fail at it, and that's okay. And I'm not a failure, but I also like, if I keep doing the next right thing, if I always prioritize doing the right thing, then I actually might not fail at it.
Mm.
And even if I do, it's okay.
Yeah, obviously I relate with that. I mean, getting sober is so like monumental for people like us, and it was the same. I always remember like getting the first like paycheck and being able to pay the bills and looking in the bank and it wasn't overdrawn, and right, it was like, whoa, like there was such a sense of like gratification from, well, I've like done this, I've like shown up at the job like long enough to get the paycheck and to pay the bills and to pay the cell phone, and there's like a little bit of cash in the bank and I can buy a cup of coffee, and like, and it's like there was those small wins in the beginning that just like compounded, and then like, oh, I got some tips at the catering joint, and like then they said like, well, we told you could just answer the phone, but now like we actually might let you show up like physically at like one of our catering events, and the backstory to this, which I love, right, is that my boss who gave me a chance, I was a week sober, and I wrote this beautiful resume of all this management experience, which of course was not true at all. And he saw right through it. And he's sitting with me at his, because they had a cafe, and then catering was out of the back as well. And we're sitting in the cafe, and he looks at me and he looks at the resume. He looks at me, he rips the resume in half and then in half again. And he says, "You're hired because I believe in the underdog."
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like, huge place in my heart for that man. I mean, in many ways, he like helped save my life and give me like this place where, hey, I'm going to pay $8 an hour and you're just going to answer the phone. You're going to take the order and you're going to walk it over and put it in the kitchen. Like, that's all you're going to do. Because that's probably all I was really capable of at that time. But it was those small wins early on, that started to give me hope similarly. Like, oh, like I can start to see a future, and I think that I could have some of that. And so I guess what I want to do is like skip a little bit, because you and I both have experienced feeling shame and all of that as it relates to substance use and failures with jobs and employment relationships, probably all that like in those times. And yet then we pulled our lives together, and then we got to do some cool things professionally, right? I mean, investment banking, private equity, starting companies. Like, fast forward a little bit, and I guess just talk a little bit about what it's like to take a risk and to do something that maybe you don't know how to do very well, and what it's like to then experience failure at kind of a different level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's right. Like in mergers and acquisitions, you're going to fail constantly. And a lot of people will burn out from it very quickly because you put a ton of work into these deals. And I mean, I've had deals, mergers and acquisitions deals, that on the day of closing fell apart. I had one where Optum was buying this company that was the buyer of my client. And the day of closing, I get a call from the buyer saying, well, Optum actually just dropped like this moratorium on any new acquisitions starting today. And I'm like, but we have closing today. The moratorium starts today. So
And those are contingency deals, right? So you're not getting paid the entire time. So maybe you've worked a year or even 2 years potentially on a deal, and then the day it's supposed to close,
about 2 years
goodbye.
at that point, and I got nothing. And that's I mean, it happens all the time. And so you have to be comfortable with the fact that like you're going to put in a ton of effort and you're going to put your neck out there. You're going to take risks and they're not always going to pan out. Um, I think we both share in an experience of like, starting a company and then losing that company. And that was definitely for me, that was the most painful. Like I don't know of any failure other like that was more painful than that one. When you start a company, you are putting your everything into it. It's your baby. It's like your DNA, blood, sweat, and tears. You're working 12 to 15 to sometimes, 16, 17-hour days on end, often on weekends for extended periods of time. Um, I mean, it's just like it becomes everything to you. And I'm not saying that that's the healthiest thing, but that's the only, I mean, if anyone's watching this has started to come, like, that that's true. Like, there's no other way to do it, unfortunately. And then you start to see its success, like to grow and, be able to walk on its own and people, taking on the culture and then it changes. And at some point you can no longer really, protect it anymore. And it's going to become its own thing and it's growing into an adult and it gets into its own problems. And, you try to like discipline it and, make sure that like it stays on the right track. But you can lead as much as you want, but like there's some like elements to it that you just can't quite control entirely. And yet you still, love it and care for it and nurture it and try and guide it in the right direction. Um, and it becomes this like really important part of your life. And then to lose it, I would not say that it's anything. Please don't hear me. Like it's nothing like losing a child. Um, I don't even like using that. I mean, like saying that it's not like that because it's so far away from that. But it is painful, and then to lose it like really feels like an indictment on, for me at least, it felt like an indictment on my character, my morality, my professional ability. Um, it it felt like a loss of like a huge part of me. I didn't know what to do when I woke up in the morning. I didn't know how to go to sleep. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know how to do anything. I couldn't like walk in a straight line. I could not function in life for a period of time after losing it. And that failure was all of the failures in life definitely prepared me to be able to handle that one. But that one was like the mother of all failures.
There was nothing that prepared me for the experience you just described. Like, obviously, I had experienced a ton of failure just as a human being, and right, all of these areas. I mean, we're talking a bit more professionally, but just relationships and family and work and right, all of these things, and yet the pain of what you just described of taking something from a simple idea, right, to a living, breathing organization that's for us is helping people and is making money and building culture and doing all these things. And then to all of a sudden realize you're fucked for whatever the reason is. What I remember most was realizing that we were fucked and being so ashamed in that moment, right? Which was months before we ended up actually selling the company, which I know you guys did too, right? So like we actually sold the company, and more or less what we did in that was we preserved people's jobs. We took care of some of the debt. We made sure our employees were taken care of, right? So we talk about selling companies, not like huge big windfalls and, vacations ahead and new cars. I mean, it was very much like the decision I have is, will somebody basically preserve the 40 people that have jobs here and take care of some of the debt so I don't go bankrupt and whatever. But I remember the moment when I realized like we were in the death spiral and that there probably wasn't a way out, and feeling so ashamed that I couldn't even talk to anybody about it, because I felt a lot of the same things you did, which was just such a sense of, this has destroyed any sense of who I am as a human being. I built an identity around being an entrepreneur and being a qualified behavioral health professional, and like, a little bit like known, because of some of the work I'd done prior to this. And right. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you are a fucking failure. And what I did was I went completely internal. Like I didn't tell anybody. Obviously there was discussions like internally, like within the company, but like I couldn't even talk to investors. I couldn't talk to like partners, family, friends, colleagues, because I was so embarrassed. Doesn't even cover it. It's just this sense of like, if I tell somebody about this, it will be true that I am a complete and utter failure. And I wouldn't say that it went deeper in terms of wanting to do anything that would be like detrimental to my health or to do things like that. But I can still sit with like the pain of that moment. And then that was like the beginning, because then from that moment for another 6 months, it was every day. Right. And then at some point in that time, I had also alienated so much of the culture because of me selfishly trying to carry all this stress instead of allowing people to carry it with me and support me in the process and all of this, because I was so ashamed I couldn't reach out for help. So then I'm carrying it basically alone, and then I'm alienating a culture. I'm destroying a culture of people. And then walking in one Monday morning and literally like my partners and our leadership team telling me like, get the fuck out of here and like, don't come back. And that was like this culmination of like, oh. So it's not only that I have failed, it's also then I am literally being ousted, from this thing that, that I was a part of birthing. And like, boy, the pain that comes with failure, like what you're describing and what I've experienced, is like, it's hard to even verbalize.
You moved away, right? Didn't you like move?
I did, because my dad got sick at the exact same time, and it was this perfect excuse. Don't get me wrong. I'm very glad that what I did was move and actually spend the last 2 months with my father before he passed away. But it was a very easy excuse to be like, oh, okay, like, you don't want me here and we're in trouble. Oh, my dad's sick. Like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm going to go spend this time with my dad. And so, yeah, actually, like the last several months while we were going through the acquisition process and the deal and all that, I was in Arizona. So then I was like physically removed. But in hindsight, again, it was the right decision no matter what was going on. And it was also a really convenient excuse to run away.
And on top of that, you're losing your dad.
Yeah.
I mean,
and right, even deeper is the only person that I ever wanted to look at me and say, I'm proud of you, son, was my dad.
Same here. Yeah.
And so then I turn around and not only show up, but basically say, I've lost it all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was a lot wrapped up, of course, not just in losing the business, but then like all these like childhood boyish like stories inside of, if I'm just successful, like my dad will be proud of me, right? If I just do this thing, and then basically having to show up hat in hand to the only person I actually gave a shit about being proud of me, to then say, and I've lost it all. So yeah, it definitely like was stripped away.
Oh my God.
So that moment, right, was powerful. I mean, it's probably the most painful time of my life, really. Like It was more painful than getting sober. And it was all wrapped up, of course, in this idea of failure. And what it did is it stripped away everything, though, right? It literally took me down to the studs and was
Like what?
like,
Like what did it strip away?
well, unchecked ego,
Mm-hmm.
right? Overconfidence. I mean, I used like ego was always really protective in this strong sense of insecurity I had underneath, so I would always overcompensate with ego, right? And being right or having the right answers or whatever it was. And it was finally like the universe's way of being like, look, man, like we've tried to help you go deep into some of this, but now we're really going to just like take it all off. Like you're going to be stripped down all the way and have to really look at like who you are as a human being, knowing that you'll never be able to make this man proud, literally. And like this company it's not part of your identity anymore. So who are you if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not successful, if you're not the smart guy in the room, if you're not, right, the leader, if you're not the CEO, if you're not, right, like let's remove all of these identities from you and all of these protective things and let's see who you are.
And so in that moment, you don't know that 5 years later, you're going to be getting the award from the finance committee to start Ava Health, right? So in that moment, I'm just curious how did you look at like your future and like what's coming down the road at this point in life?
Boy, another interesting thing is I had this avoidant optimism. So something about getting sober was that I started to become optimistic about a lot of life over time, but there was a lot of avoidance in it. So it's kind of like when bad things would happen, it'd be like, oh, but I know like something good will come out of this. However, for a lot of that time, it was a way to avoid the pain of whatever was happening in that moment. And so in all of that, I would continue to like tell myself like, oh, there's going to be lessons and wisdom and I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow. And like, there's going to be something amazing that grows out of this and do. But I'd also let so many people down. I mean, I had to go to, the people that had invested in that company were my friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically went to them and said, I lost your money. And friends would say like, but like when and how? And like, and I'd be like, yeah, like it's happening now. And I should have told you 3 months ago that we were in trouble and I should have asked for help. But I literally couldn't because I was so fucking destroyed and so fucking embarrassed. And so losing the identity around like CEO was the tough one to overcome. Right. And so, and you know this because 2 years ago, I would have told you that I have no idea what my role in all of this would be. Was I going to be a chief marketing officer? Was I going to be a sales guy? Like the idea of being a CEO again was so like off limits because I had felt so destroyed from my own actions and everything else that went on that I had no guidance, no hope for where I could go. And you know that prior to this, I did take a role as a chief marketing officer for a company in our industry because I was like, well, that's what I'll do. Like, I'm a good marketer. Like, but I think I can never lead like that again. So I think this optimism, this like avoidant optimism of just like keep moving, keep going forward, like keep taking the next thing, keep exploring, keep being curious, right? Like just keep going deep. All of this kept me moving forward, but I still in no way was connected to the idea that I would ever like found a company as a CEO again.
And so you come off like confident, you know what you're doing, like you know what tomorrow's gonna hold, like we got this, all that stuff. That's what I think everyone sees. Well, not that I think, I know that's what everyone sees. What's going on inside of you though, like today? Like how do you feel about like what tomorrow holds, knowing that you have a lifetime of failures that have prepared you for this point, that you've had to fail forward dozens, maybe hundreds of times to prepare you for this moment?
I think I did a pretty good job of writing about a lot of it this week with, some things that have come up, in the past week with Ava Health and within the current just environment of healthcare in the US and Colorado. And, I used words like scared, right? And feeling scared and not feeling resilient and waking up at 2:13 in the morning with, panic and anxiety at 3:18 in the morning as I wake up again, thinking about how do I fix things that can't be fixed at 3:18 in the morning. And I think that, and there's a line that I also wrote, which I'm resonating with, is just because somebody carries it well doesn't mean the weight isn't heavy, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm different than anybody else or you or anybody else. We all carrying weight all day, every day with just life and everything else. And I think what continues for me is that I've developed enough of a sense of trust in myself that's not rooted in ego as much as it used to be, that I have people in my life that I really trust to do what they do really well. There's enough of a picture painted to then guess a little bit, take a step forward, see how it works, come back to it, evaluate. But I would say in many ways, it's constantly trying to recalibrate out of positions of anxiety, fear, the unknown, uncertainty, back to, all right, like a decision has to get made in whatever way right now, and I have to make that decision no matter what's going on. And so having to constantly come back and realign to where I'm at is really important.
I think for me, it's like the handling the weight in the context of having had a life of failure, but failing forward is like I guess I kind of like I think failing so often taught me to like the failure is not the end. It's definitely not. And like there's actually ways to, use it for like something good and learn from it, but also like to recover from it quick and like get right back up on the horse. Um and I mean, and that's like the reality of like leading a company is like it's just gonna happen all the time. I mean, you can't not assume that it's gonna happen daily, I wish it wouldn't, but like Amazon, Microsoft, like Nvidia, like any of the Tesla, like any of these huge companies out there, like they're all constantly failing. We don't see those stories, but like if you were inside those companies, you would see the constant failures happening all the time. That's part of life, and it's like it's interesting because we started this talking about like the facade on social media and about like, life is like the success and like how you're gonna, make like $200,000 a month and, like, um, and even in my first Broken Edge podcast, I'm talking about kind of my life story and the way I even share it, it's like, yeah, you can see some failures in it, but like it's really more in the context of like an investment bank and then private equity and then, Sparrow and then now, investment banking again, now this and it seems like really kind of couched in positivity and like it's all success and the reality is that I see it though. I see the nuance. I see the specifics of it zoomed in. I see all the failures in that. And so in this podcast, we're really highlighting more of that, which is actually how I see it. And I think just after having been through enough of it, enough time and repetition of it, like it's like normalized for me. Like I'm not scared of failure anymore. And so do I think that things are going to go perfect like today or tomorrow? Like, no, like, and I'm not worried about it anymore. Like I don't, yeah, like our issues with like, pair relationships right now. And like, mostly they're great, but like we obviously have like one issue there.
Right.
Like, it's like, I'm not worried about it. It's like, we're going to be all right.
I know, and that's such an interesting place to be because failure was always this it was always this thing that like loomed in, well, if this happens, then we may fail. If this decision doesn't get made, then we fail. And I share in the experience you just described, which is I don't experience that now, right? I have such confidence in what we're doing and how we're doing it and the people we have and all of that, that I also don't, I don't think there's been a moment in 2 years that I have thought failure's real. Moments of anxiety about how are we going to deal with this, right? Or like this seems a bit insurmountable or whatever, but failure hasn't been connected in it, right? Which is, it's interesting you bring that up because I really hadn't thought about that. That like, that has been a very motivating thing for me in the past, is basically not to fail. But it has nothing to do with my motivation over the last 2 years.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I don't know what that is.
Right.
I think part of it's what we talked about. Like, I think we grow and we learn and the wisdom becomes extracted from previous failures. And I remember a conversation we were having briefly in your office one night, and you had said something about like wanting to go hire some like really amazing people out of like BCG or McKinsey or whatever. And I remember saying, I was like, dude, I want to go hire some people that have failed so fucking bad that they'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
And it was something that one of my former investors had said to me as we were going through this really tumultuous time and where I was really broken and really beaten down with the last company. And he referenced that there's actually a highly successful private equity fund. And this investor is a hedge fund manager, super successful. And he had said there's actually a private equity fund that only hires people that have gone out and tried to start their own companies or taken like a big risk and had like a massive failure. Because what they found was that people that had gone through these types of experiences had gained so much knowledge and experience and expertise that they just outshined, no matter where you had gone to school, no matter what like great job you had coming out of school. They basically looked for the people that like took the risk, had the failure, because they had been able to basically quantify that they actually get better performance from people that had experienced that before.
That's beautiful.
I was like, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one other piece to like the value of failure is it does give you the opportunity to do a vast array of different things, right? Because like you're failing, so you have to try something new now. and so it's like there's this like, I don't want to call it like Renaissance man kind of thing, but in a way it's like, well, I can tell you all about like water rights. Like, you want to know about water rights? Like, let's fucking talk about water rights right now. Like, I can tell you about dog shit in apartment complexes. Like, you want to talk about that? I can tell you about like, dialysis and the business of that and the effects of like Medicare Part B and C and, even Medicaid in that. Like, I mean, just like weird nuancy things that like you would only pick up if you had a breadth of experiences over time that you would only get if you were failing.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't fail, then you would do the same thing for the rest of your life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm like, man, that would have been a much nicer, easier life. But the value of all the failure is getting to see and do a lot of different things. Now, my depth has always been, I shouldn't say always, but like for the last 16-ish years in corporate finance. Even before that, it was in more like investment stuff, so still finance, I guess. But that depth of experience and the column there has been able to be applied to like a bunch of different things. And so and even that like repetition of doing startups and how do we do like employee benefits and how do we set up the architecture for accounting. Well, I mean, I've done it like a few times now.
Yeah.
I have like a pretty good sense of what to do now. Like first time sucked, it was awful. Like second time was a little bit better. Like at this point, like kind of got it down.
Yeah.
So
for sure. I mean, the lessons and the wisdom for me that come out if you pay attention, right? And so, for example, I don't think I would have paid attention if my ego hadn't been destroyed, right? Because if my ego hadn't gone away, then it would have just kept telling me, well, it's these people's fault. It's the payer's fault. It's right. It would have been shifting blame. Whereas what happened was when the ego was stripped down, then it went back to, you have to evaluate your level of accountability and responsibility in everything that happened, which then becomes a sense of really like extreme ownership, right? About everybody plays a part, yet Like, I really need to own this. And so like so many of those things have led to what we have created today, right? My conviction that I could never start a business again without someone like you and someone like Ian. Right. I had to have such sophisticated financial operations and then such sophisticated operations because I now know my skill set. Right. And so it's like I'm playing those areas, but those are not my places. Those are not my sandboxes to live in, you know? And so it's like even just the small things, who do I need around me? Right. Once I gain more insight into my strengths and my weaknesses and all of that. And also then like how to show up and build culture and what does it mean to build culture actually versus build culture that lives on a wall with the value statement, right? Last company, I had all these same thoughts. I had all these same beliefs about people and the assets, like the most valuable asset that we have is our people. So how do we prioritize that? I knew all this stuff 10 years ago, but I had no idea how to actually implement it and build it. And so it literally was like vision statements on the fucking wall and talking about happy workplace culture, you know, and people being unhappy and not having a good culture, you know? So it's like being able to take all of those things and go, okay, now I have a blank slate. Like, what would I do differently now that I know all of these things don't work? And so it's like that ability it's like, it's almost like compounding growth, you know? It's like, you know, I get to experience these things and it's adding to the bank of experiences like you just described, you know, having all this diversity in what I've done in my life and then being able to bring it all to a head and be like, all right, cool. Now I have all this experience. Now, hopefully I've jumped ahead of a lot of the mistakes I've already made. So we can just start at this point now. And now I'm going to have a bunch more mistakes to make and a bunch more failures to happen. But as long as we continue to stay aligned to shortening the distance between like having an insight into like that doesn't work or that's not working and then doing something different, to me, it's just like, it's how we begin to compound into more hope and optimism and success is by shortening those distances between the failures as well.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to ponder, man.
It is, and it still to me, like to this day, comes back to you know, working in the plastic factory and like doing the same repetition over and over, and like feeling like, man, I know that I was built for more than this. I know, and I don't know what it's gonna take to get out of this like funk right now, and to look back on what it took was constant failure, constant failing forward though, learning from things, continuing to try, continuing to get back up on the horse right away. Not always right away, but and and to keep that hope that like if I continuously do the next right thing, that something will start to work out. And if I push myself and I always make myself uncomfortable, like really try to grow and try to like always do better than I did yesterday, learn something new, try something I've never tried, that it will lead to something. And to get comfortable with failure, to get comfortable with like living in the suck, and to avoid like getting too excited about like when the wins happen because they're temporal, and that feeling of the win can inflate the ego, but it's going to be gone tomorrow, and then I'm going to be stuck with feeling like a douchebag for at my ego the prior day. Yeah, all of those lessons. So like, I mean, the plastic factory to today was like painful, a painful road. And again, like I think like I at any one of those moments would have preferred to have just had like a regular accounting job and not have to go through any of that. And yet now today I'm so grateful I didn't. I'm so grateful I took the harder road, and suffered for almost 20 years. Yeah, 20 years.
Everything I want is on the other side of hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that. So it's just like whatever's fucking hard, I know that whatever I want is on the other side of that thing now, you know? And it just is, whether it's personal stuff that I have to deal with and personal growth, whether it's in relationship, whether it's professionally. It's like when I get faced with this situation that I deem, right, or my perspective is this is going to be really hard. This is going to be really challenging. This is uncertain. I don't know what this is. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this, right? Whatever that is, I know that actually the life I want is just on the other side of that. That keeps me motivated. The way you describe it is like, okay, like this is not going to be a straight line, but I know the life I'm seeking is through hard. Nothing I have was from easy. Nothing, you know? So
God, I love that. Yeah.
We're going to have a lot to talk about. You know, we open doors on Monday, and there's going to be a lot of risks and chances we've taken, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, and it'll be fun to continue to come on here and just talk about the ways that you know, success has really come from, you know, failing our way forward.
Yeah.
So,
Let's never forget to like talk about our failures, because you're right. Like we need to normalize that. Like it's everywhere, and we only want to talk about our successes, right? Let's not do that. Let's talk about our failures.
we definitely won't, man.
Yeah.
I love you. Thanks for obviously sitting here and being you, and I love sitting with you all the time. So thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, hard truths, real conversations, and sparks of possibility in a world that's a little broken-ish. Like, comment, subscribe.
Love you guys. Thanks for watching.
Oh, you didn't give your smash.
Oh yeah, smash that like.
Smash it. I like button.
Smash it for David.
Come on.
Yes.
We'll see y'all next time.
See you guys. Peace. Bye.